So last week we talked about fear. We talked about, some of the challenges. Obviously, fear in and of itself can be challenging, not always, but can be. And when we wanted to talk about ways to manage it, and obviously when we talk about businesses, being an entrepreneur, having goals, having a quota, having revenue targets, even for Kenneth's nonprofit, right? There's some of the things that we think about, like, am I going to get this number? Am I going to get this grant? Am I going to close this contract? Right? So there's all these things that we need to be mindful of. We talked about naming it, being clear about the thing that is the source of the fear, right? And so that we can, like, okay, it's not just this like weird feeling that's going on in our head that we can't name. It's like, oh no, I name it. I'm afraid that I'm not going to get this revenue, this contract or this grant, and it's causing me some concern. Analyze it. Well, what is it? Can I control it? Have I put my best foot forward? Do I have other irons in the fire? Right? There's these things that we can do to analyze it and address it such that it's not just this uncontrollable sensation. It's a real practical thing that we can put our arms around. And then ultimately, we want to release it, right? If we've done everything that we can do to mitigate the risk, to mitigate the fear, then there's no point in dwelling on it. We just got to release it and move forward. So that was a really good conversation. This week, we're talking about purpose. And I've just been a part of so many conversations over the past week or so, and with brothers especially, men especially, where we're talking about purpose. And I've noted a theme about some challenges in having this conversation. So I want to do my part to contribute to men growing in their sense of purpose and us, just kind of rallying around each other around the idea of purpose. When I'm talking about purpose, I'm talking about kind of a couple of core things I want to be clear about. For me, at least, this is my definition, and anybody wants to, differ with this definition, please feel free to jump in. Let's discuss it. But when I talk about purpose, I'm talking about the sum of our individual gifts and talents. So the things that we were made with, born with, that God created us with, with to utilize, plus lived experience. And I'm talking about work experience, trauma, hurt, relationships, whatever, right? All of those things that we, form and inform our personalities and our opinions and our tribe. So the people that we align with, the people that have shared values, and so on and so forth. So let me paint the picture for you. One of my gifts is administration. I'm good at just organizing stuff and getting things, into a plan. I was a product manager, so I managed a software development team, and I managed our roadmap, and I managed, communications with our clients and our leadership team and the rest of the company. So I'm good at organizing things. That's one of my gifts. Lived experience. I was raised without a father. Well, I mean, had a father. I still was grown in a lab. I had a father, but I wasn't raised by my father. And I wasn't raised, to be blunt, with a whole lot of quality male role models, male leadership. And so I had this chasm that I could not explain through much of my life until late 30s. I was like, wait a minute, maybe that has, something to do with how I live. And in fact, it's always touching for me, as was the case on Tuesday, to see Kenneth and his father interact in a very supportive and loving way. It's like, yeah, yeah, that's what I was missing. That's it. That was it. So that was my lived experience. And that lived experience impacted my marriage and impacted how I raised my son and impacted my fellowships with other men, so on and so forth. And so once I made that connection between all those things, now my tribe is men. This space, this thing that we're doing here is a reflection of that tribe that I'm trying to cultivate. Men who want to have this type of fellowship so that we can fill those gaps, and live fuller, richer lives. So that's what I mean by purpose. I'll pause if anyone has any questions or has a differing opinion, but I think, hopefully you can get it. No disagreements. All right. So we're aligned on generally on the definition of purpose. So then the question is, how do we get it? Right? I did not discover purpose, really, that whole formula that I just outlined, until a couple of years ago. And I'm 49. right? So I am now in my 50th year having just discovered it. And so when I go around and I go to different spaces and I say, how many people know what their purpose is? How many people know what their gifts are? I get a lot of silence. In fact, I bet if I were to ask that question here, I won't put anyone on the spot. But if I were to ask the question here, how many people know what their gifts are and know what their purpose is? I would venture a guess that there would be some silence. So hands would be raised. I know Kenneth's hand would be raised. A couple of brothers, and Pastor Preacher's hand would certainly be raised. I listen to this man of God quite a bit, and I know definitively what his purpose is. Um, but that is the challenge that I think many of us don't know, and so um, yeah, I want to solve that problem. I want to make it more relevant, purpose a more readily available and tangible thing for more people. Does that make sense? Does anyone disagree? Do I have the assumptions wrong? Do we think more people know their purpose than I'm letting on? Do more people know their gifts than I think is the case? Like, anyone disagree with that?
What's the last one there, Dave? Submission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But do you think that people more people know their purpose or know their gifts than I believe know it?
What was the number? I'm sorry.
I didn't give a number. I'm just saying it's very low.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's super low.
Yeah. Okay. So let's operate from that assumption that even within this call, no judgment whatsoever. Particularly if you are under 30, no judgment whatsoever. But even if you're over 30, again, I just discovered mine. I would say around 45, right? So it is what it is. But talking through it, here's what I've gathered as to contributing factors to discovering, embracing, and walking in purpose. Number one, self-discovery. Here's the challenge with self-discovery, as Ryan just said, and I'm not saying that this is your motivation, Ryan, but Andres touched on it as well. Three businesses, two of them were to break from the first business, right? And I said the same thing. I have started businesses, started projects because I did not want to deal with the struggle that I was having in one business or one project. Now, if I was willing to do that over a project or a business, imagine what I was willing to do based upon the internal struggles, the internal hurt, the internal trauma that I've been repressing and oppressing or suppressing for decades, right? Daddy trauma, mommy trauma, early girlfriend trauma, school trauma, whatever. All of those things that are buried within my lived experience that I have never unpacked and really solved, right? I'm going to try to change my personality. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do that. Running from who I am. So that's why self-discovery here is listed number one. I want to pause there. Does that resonate with anyone? Or anybody think I'm full of it, as they say, in terms of self-discovery being a key part of this process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in complete agreement. My, like, how can you know your purpose without knowing yourself, right? Like
Right.
that seems self-evident.
Yes. Yes. Now, the how of that, right? The how of self-discovery is probably worth a whole other session, but just at a high level, that for me, again, getting to a place in the last 5 years, I'll say, maybe a little bit longer, where I could start to say, you know what, I do have some trauma from growing up without a father and growing up with a mother who didn't know how to raise boy, didn't wasn't prepared for that, and me running the streets of New York trying to replace that wholesome mommy daddy love with casual sex and partying, right? me discovering that as a breakthrough. I can say, oh, okay, well, what does this mean? What do I do with that information? So on and so forth. Before I knew that information, I was just doing it. I was married at the time, so I wasn't having casual sex, but I was partying, I was drinking, I was running the streets, I was doing all this stuff, I was playing video games, into the wee hours of the night because I did not have the sense of that underlying friction, that underlying tension that was forcing me away from my best self. And so we probably will at some point in some meaningful way kind of get into what that self-discovery process looks like. But I think, conceptually, we all agree that, and maybe that's why we've all been resonating around the idea of stillness the last couple of weeks, because we recognize that there is some, at least for me, I'll say, and there's some fracture underneath the surface that needs to be healed. And the only way that we heal is when we reduce the amount of things that distract us. One thing that I've noticed, and I'll move on. One thing I've noticed the last couple of weeks is that I will have multiple devices going at the same time. Do you ever catch yourself doing this? You'll have something on in the TV, something on a laptop, on an iPad, and you'll be scrolling on the phone at the same time. You ever catch yourself doing that? Anybody? Why is that? Right? We are uncomfortable with the stillness, uncomfortable with the silence. You're trying to fill that time in with something else, right? It's another project, it's another app, it's another business. For me, it was another drink, it was another woman, it was another party, it was another something, because the stillness alone, the quietness of having to listen to my own thoughts, hear my own emotions, hear from God, hear all of these things was difficult, to say the least. And so, how we navigate that self process with this second point, self love, where we can uncover some of this trauma, uncover some of this hurt, uncover some of the brutality that lives within us, the grief, the shame, the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, the unforgiveness, all of that. When we need self-love to protect us, right? It's like when in the movies when they go into some nuclear explosion, the guys are all in the hazmat suits, right? Because you got to be protected to go into these areas where there's a bunch of toxicity. And so how do we approach self-discovery with self-love is critical. And I'll pause again. Any thoughts or any questions? You know, this is heavy stuff. So I want to make space for it.
I'm trying to look up a quote about distractions and some other things from my favorite book of all time. I'll share it when I find it.
Okay.
Well, I kind of want to push back a little bit
Please, please,
on that distraction. You know me,
please.
David. Like I'm, yeah, is my personality. But uh, for those that don't know, previous life when I was way younger, actually when David and I used to see each other a lot, I was a musician. I was definitely fortunate enough to do it to some degree of professionality. Um,
Great.
and that was a distraction in a lot of ways. It was a way for me to lose myself and touch myself, not and whatever, but
Pause.
to really get into certain aspects of myself
Yes.
that there was no other pathway.
Yeah.
Um, and many musicians and artists, like that's what their art is. Um, so what I found was there were multiple impetuses to distract myself. One was to get away, for sure, and that's what you're speaking to, and there's truth in that. And I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true, but what I'm saying more is why someone goes into distraction. There are multiple motivations,
Sure.
and sometimes that distraction is is a recentering process.
Explain how are distractions helpful in recentering? What's your
All
favorite?
right, so I'll bring it back to still music. So jazz musician, um, and heavy into improvisation.
Okay.
You're not playing a song. You're not. I mean, you are playing a song, whatever. There's a structure and there are things to follow, and this, that, and the other. But a lot of it is just stream of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes I would I knew I could play the song, and I wasn't really like working on improvising. Um, I was just improvising, uh, and doing so sometimes in the same song for hours, like literally playing the same song and improvising for 45 plus minutes. Um, and in some way at different times it was distracting myself. At other times it was learning about myself. And like, I subscribe to, I'm not like Buddhist, not in a structured way, but there's a lot of Buddhist philosophies. And I'm only bringing this one in. There's this aspect there where you're talking about your watcher, right? Like there's yourself, your ego basically, and then that, similar to a concept of a soul, there's a part of you that is watching that. And the more that you can get to that, the more you can detach from what's going on, and the more you can. So that the experience of um, improvising for an extended period of time, which was a distraction, which was I don't want to deal with it, which was, and I was also when I was like fucking dead ass broke, was broke musician for sure. Um, and it was easy for me to get into that watcher. And when I returned, it was easier for me to make more intentional decisions,
Hmm.
more intentional. Um, and this is when I would play for that long without smoking weed. Like when I was smoking like lots of weed, like, yeah, there was a lot of distraction. Um, but it's the same action cycling through multiple functions.
Yes. I can vibe with that. I think there's some wisdom in that, and I certainly don't want to suggest to anyone here that you have to be a one-trick pony 24/7, right? That you can only work on whatever the assignment is 24/7, and that anything outside of that is a pointless distraction. Um, so yeah, I mean, let's make sure that we're talking about these things within reason. What I'm referring to, and I'm really talking about myself, is habitual new projects, habitually
Okay.
coming up with something new to put in front of yourself so as not to deal with the uncomfortable thing. It's one thing to say, you know what, you're working on apps, but you take the afternoons off and practice karate, right? Like that's one thing. Andres is at the gym, right? Okay, fine, you're doing that, or you're writing a book, you're doing whatever, you're practicing something else. That's fine, right? We need balance. And if you study flow state, kind of optimal performance, and some of the science around flow state, it actually recommends that we shift our minds, on a consistent basis so that we can stay fresh. All right. So there's some wisdom to that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. The process of synthesis, right? Like of taking like lots of various stimuli and then finding a space, whatever it is, to create that synthesis.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. You can be into cooking, right? And really getting into recipes and sourcing interesting ingredients. You can be into martial arts and music and have a balanced life. My point is, when I talk about something on the TV, something on the iPad, laptop or iPad, and something on my phone at the same time, that is not that, right? That is not synthesis, right? That is, intentionally trying to drown something out of my consciousness by staying busy. And so that I think is something different. And doing
Like
multiple projects.
multitasking?
No, 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 no. First of all, I don't think multitasking is a real thing. I think that is, something that, Microsoft Windows tried to sell us on. Microsoft tried to. I just don't think anybody really is a multitasker. And in the
I
software,
mean, by definition, like the way that we multitask is we pause and then we focus, and we
that's right.
pause and we focus. So
That's right.
like the people that are quote unquote good multitaskers
Hmm.
can do that process faster than most.
Well, yeah, but that's not
Yeah,
multitasking.
but it's not. I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
I'm agreeing with you, Dan.
Yeah, that is what we call context switching. You are switching the thing that you're working on, and there's some overhead associated with going from task to task. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds of some of that stuff, but I think we get the principle. The principle here is that um, there are times in which we use distractions, things in the world, projects, new businesses, new girlfriends, new whatever, right? To distract ourselves from the deep work of dealing with ourselves and our hurt and our trauma or whatever it is that we need to deal with. And what I'm suggesting is that we need to be mindful of that, aware of that, and approach ourselves with a certain amount of self-love so that we can do the deep work and the self-discovery.
So I found a little bit of what I was looking for. And by the way, this my favorite book of all time. I need to read it again, actually, right now. It's called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. Phenomenal, phenomenal book. But essentially, he says, your desire to avoid suffering is the basis of all neurosis.
Yeah,
And by distracting yourself, you are avoiding the suffering.
that's right.
You'll have all these things going on because, like you said, you don't want to do the deep work. You don't want to have to face
That's
that
right.
that deep stuff.
That's right.
Um, and in the beginning of the book, literally the first sentence of the book is life is difficult. And we know that life is difficult, but we can only truly understand that life is difficult. We can only transcend the difficulty once we truly understand and accept that life is difficult.
Hmm.
And then he goes on to say that discipline is the basic set of tools required to solve life's problems. With some
Mm.
discipline, you can solve some problems. With total discipline, you can solve all problems.
That's right.
And that's something that I struggle with. I've struggled with my entire life. But yeah, for anybody taking notes, The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck is one of the best book I think I've ever read in my entire life.
Like it. Uh, he sounds like we share similar philosophies. I've written about and plan to write more about the idea that comfort is dangerous. The more that we pursue comfort in our lives, the more we, make the decisions based upon comfort, right? Is what you're talking about. The more we find ourselves in situations and in places where we are living well below our standard, well below our capability, well below our peak selves, right? You just look at something like nutrition, right? The comfort decision is cake, right? The comfort decision is hot dogs and pizza and so on and so forth. The discipline is decision is vegetables, it's fruit, it's hydration, it's vitamins and minerals, right? A salad and most times, for me at least, I'll speak for myself, is far less interesting than a slice of pizza. Far, right? And so if I make the decision based upon, the pizza sounds awesome, right? Where am I going to be? Where am I going to be long term? And you multiply and extrapolate that kind of decision making process across our work ethic, our relationship ethic, how we treat the women around us, how we conduct ourselves in that regard. You talk about substances and how much we start to depend on alcohol and this, that, and the third, right? And go down the line and say every time that I've made a decision based on comfort, it has led me astray. right? And so the degree to which we can recognize that and be accountable to that and try to the best of our ability not to make the comfortable decision, which is the a big part of interestingly enough Stoicism and Christianity and other beliefs is like don't make the comfortable decision, be resolved, be firm. Um, the more likely we are to find and achieve and sustain our best selves. So thank you for that, Ben. That was a good quote, good contribution. Two more bullet points, but I want to sit with self-discovery and self-love because I think these are such heavy concepts and not concepts that we are taught as men. We are taught the opposite. To not discover ourselves, right? To not, to just like anything in the past, just repress it, put it in a bottle, throw it in the ocean and, let someone else discover it, when we pass away. Right. So that is contrary to how we were raised and self-love, the idea of self-love. We know pride, we know bravado, we know macho, we know toughness, we know self preservation to some degree, but self-love, that's not language that I think any of us are geared toward. Certainly not by the systems and structures around us. I want to sit with these if these are things that anyone is grappling with so we can talk through them. Everybody's good? All right. All hearts and minds are clear. Getting back to the content here. So, we're talking about keys to purpose, discovering purpose, embracing purpose, walking in purpose, self discovery to kind of understand. I'll just go back one slide for those who just joined or joined recently. Self discovery to understand our gifts, self discovery to understand the value of our lived experience. For me, the value of growing up without a father means I'm sensitive to it. Means, among other things, that I can sympathize with men that have gone through that and sympathize with men who have used women, casual sex, drugs, partying, so and so as a replacement for that, right? And so the self-discovery helps me to understand that. Self-love helps me to not be shamed by it, not be to set low by it. And then service is what converts it from pain to value. Service is what converts these lived experiences and our trauma from pain to value because it says, well, in my case, I went through that thing so that I can minister to these men, minister to men who've had that trauma, minister to young boys as I do via mentorship with 100 Black men, minister to men I meet on the street, clients, adults, grown men that are older than me who are still going through the self-discovery and self-love process. I can say, yeah, brother, I've been there. I know what that's like. I was in the room on Monday with a bunch of Christian men, and I talked about my struggles with pornography, and it was like, oh, gasp. It's like, yeah, all right, I know I'm not the only one in here. I know I'm not the only one who's been there. I know I'm not. So, the fact that I'm going to be brave enough and open enough to own my story and through self-love and self-discovery, I think is going to bless somebody. But in a lot of these spaces, we got to button it up and you got to only show our good sides. Social media tells us we only share the parts of us that are polished up, look good, filtered, AI generated, all of that type of stuff. Let's keep it real. Come on now. Let's keep it real. So for me, service is the thing that got me through the hump. It got me to the place where I can say I can embrace all of these things and bring my best self to the world because I'm not shamed by my challenges and shamed by my struggles.
Steve, I'll tap in here.
Thank you, brother.
Because when I even think about, just reflecting on Tuesday, and I made the reference of being a servant, being a servant.
Hmm.
And I kind of want to rewind too to something that was said that I want people to understand. I didn't find myself until I found my purpose.
Hmm.
I know that it was a comment made earlier about you got to find yourself before you really know your purpose, but sometimes you find yourself within your purpose.
Hmm.
So I think one of the things we have to do when we have these conversations too is let's not just settle on a key way that certain things have to be done, because even as I'm looking at your list, it could seem like a list of 1 2 3 4, but it could be a list of 3 2 4 1,
Absolutely. Yes, I was going to make that
depending
point.
on
Yes,
where your individual, because some people
that's
may
right.
find their purpose by being of service,
Yes.
but some people may think I can't be of service until I find my purpose.
Yep. Yep.
So, and I'm going, you know what? I'm going to have to drop that summary since I finally have it together into the chat. At least if it might not, it's not the journal one, but I'm gonna wait till later on so there's no distraction for the conversation.
Mhm.
But I think that there are certain questions that we have to ask, and even that being of service, is the work that I'm doing serving myself or my person, or is it serving my purpose?
Mm,
And I think that service goes back to
mm,
any decision I talk about that I have to make. I have to start to ask myself, is it person
mhm,
or is it purpose?
mhm.
And I think sometimes we may get out and we may think we doing so much for everybody else, but is it truly benefiting everybody else? Is it truly just to benefit you?
Amen.
And if
That's
it's to
right.
benefit you, then it's not service.
That's right. That's
you know,
right.
so
Tough,
so you
tough.
know me, hey, I look a little bit deeper into the concepts and how we don't just take things from a surface level, because just like that word vulnerability, just like the word service, purpose, what a man is, and everything, we got to be careful
Yes,
how we choose our words, but
absolutely.
also how we try to make it seem like, well, if you don't do this, you're not gonna get that. No, no. Everybody's way of finding their way through life is different. And
Yeah.
that's what's great about these spaces if we're all open. And just like the other night, remember, somebody brought up the porn addiction, and that was actually a part when prayer was brought in,
Yep.
because it's something where, and even last year, a conversation I had with somebody told me I got to be careful of and bringing up certain things on calls, but I had a call that was based on porn and sex addiction and
Mhm.
the impact it has on our mental health,
Yes.
because everybody done picked up their phone, their computer, or something, and done watched something at
Hmm.
some point in time. If we be honest, if you haven't,
Come on
I
now.
applaud you.
Come
I
on.
applaud you. Yeah,
We,
hey, I'm gonna say this seriously but jokingly. I don't know how you made it through without it at some point in time, but the thing about it is anything in moderation can be seen as not necessarily a problem when it becomes an addiction and it's being misused. Now, not to justify that, because we can go down a whole spiritual line,
yeah.
but the reality is we have to identify when it's a problem for us. And that's the thing that we don't like to do. We like to keep those things set aside that nobody else don't know,
Come on
because
now.
we don't want it to be a problem, because we want it to be okay. So thank you, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you for reinforcing what we're talking about here and highlighting that that was a transformational moment in your call on Tuesday when the brother came forward and said, I'm struggling, right? He just came out of nowhere. He was out there fishing. He was having a good time, and he came out of nowhere. He was like, yeah, I'm struggling. That's why I'm out here fishing, because I'm trying to deal with such and such. We were like, wow, thank you, brother. Thank you for that. And you're right, your father responded with a powerful prayer, and that really brought the level of closeness and support to a new level. So thank you, brother. Dave Jacob Prince, welcome, brother. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so to add to the content here, yes, so I do agree that one could achieve very little in this life unless you've gone through the unless you've committed yourself to discovering who you are, right? Because by that, you tend to uncover what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you're not good at,
Mhm.
your some of your pain points, and then with that those information, you tend to structure your life strategy around what you're good at, right?
We
Because
should. Yeah, exactly.
it's impossible for me to serve society and my family unless I know what I'm good at and what I enjoy. I've
Yes.
been coaching, for example, youth soccer for as long as I can remember. It's something I enjoy, right? I'm good at it, and I continue to invest in that part of my life. Um, and I'll drop this. I'll wrap it up with this. One exercise I know. Well, there are many. I think a lot of the assessments, like the Myers-Briggs, Culture Index, DISC, those are they're pretty good. And but the Ikigai exercise, it
Yes.
forces you to
Yeah. Yeah.
stare at yourself in the mirror and start that surgery. So and lastly, man, the I think, and I'll leave it at this. I'll just make this one statement. And the church platform is probably not the best platform to, if one is looking for growth, for accountability and guidance in that support system. Now, this doesn't apply to David because he's obviously, sounds to me, he's had like much control over his life. So it doesn't matter where he's expressing himself. He doesn't strike me as somebody where external factors are going to like derail him from his purpose. But for anyone else who's starting out, I recommend not doing that for one simple reason. The church platform has a way of making you feel small when you like, obviously, hey, I'm struggling. I'm an alcoholic. I love to eat. I'm overweight, whatever. I need guidance. So I'm putting it on the table so you guys can, give me some tough love and help me out.
Rally. Yeah.
But the church platform, I think it has a way of, I don't think it knows yet how to deal with that. Right. So that's my, unsolicited guidance there. And lastly, I appreciate what you guys are doing here. I think it's important in our community. You know, I think we do a very good job as an African community, partying together, getting in trouble together.
Hmm.
But there's a gap when it comes to like giving each other a hands up to help
Yes.
elevate one another
Yeah.
because there's that fear inside of us. Well, if I support this brother, then my position's at risk, or he
Yes.
take what's mine. I think that's coming from a deep insecurity,
Hmm.
a lack of self-love, which we're discussing right now.
Hmm.
And the more we can expand on that, this platform, I think that'll help us out a lot.
Amen. So shall it be. Let it be so. Um, Coach Rob, I know you had your hand raised, and I know this was a topic, kind of the generational challenges that we in the Black community have in terms of supporting each other, loving each other, and so on and so forth. But, before I respond to his comment, well, actually, let me just respond to that very quickly, and I'll hand it over to you. 100%. We talked about that in Coach Rob's call yesterday, which was really good and came out of, we were talking about mostly about it from the dating perspective, how Black women and Black men are so at odds with each other in this generation. But, it's across the board. We're all at odds. And we talked about crabs in a barrel. I do want to respond to your church platform comment. I think it's reasonable. I understand where you're coming from that the church or the religion of church, the religious experience that we view as church is very judgmental and you are rewarded for being holier than thou, right? To walk in like nothing's wrong, everything is great, you're a perfect saint, so on and so forth. There is a culture that everyone should appear that way, and it becomes very hard for people to be open about their weaknesses and struggles, at least not in the macro sense. There are small groups occasionally where people can do that, and we do need to improve that. Preacher Roger Dorn, he's on the call, is a man of faith, or he was on the call. He may have dropped out. He's one of those men of faith that I think is being intentional about that. And I am not a pastor or anything like that yet, but I'd like to think that this is a form of church, right? This fellowship is a form of church, and that we're practicing real openness, and iron sharpens iron. So um, we need the brothers to keep us accountable. We need to hold each other accountable to continuing to improve in that area across the board, across society, so that it's self-love and shared love is not rare. It's a shame that it is that, but we can solve it. Coach, did you still want to jump in? If you're still here.
Okay. So, I wanted to piggyback off of something that Kenneth said because one thing I appreciate him expressing that it's an individual journey, right?
Hmm.
So, and I agree with a lot of your list, David, because I come from those same backgrounds as far as I'm a motherless and fatherless child.
Hmm.
So, I understand a lot of the dynamics that you were talking about when it comes to distractions. Unfortunately for me, because my whole 30 some years, I was looking for my father and my mother. Distractions is what kept me alive, so that I wouldn't have to deal with not having those answers that wasn't answered for me as a kid or growing up, even as an adult. So
Hmm.
I can understand the logic of the distractions, but I also, for me, um, I appreciate them because they kept me alive in
Hmm.
those times where I was seeking or looking for something. And
Yeah.
I wanted to just address something that I don't remember who said it, but they were basically saying like, is it like you can't have purpose unless you're of certain. I'm paraphrasing, but I think is if you're servicing unless you're servicing somebody else.
Hmm.
Unfortunately for me, and I don't know if this is just a blessing of how God worked in my life, was I've been of service for people my whole life because I was looking for something and I was looking for
Mm.
community. So in
Yes.
order to have that community, I was servicing people, right?
Mhm.
But also the beauty of where I'm at now, which is in the best season of my life, I service myself and it fills the well, right? So I don't pour from a cup. I don't even tip it. It just spills over and everybody eats off of what's going in my cup. So
That's
I
powerful.
appreciate that the dynamic and I
Yeah.
agree to some extent, but I don't tip my cup no more. Like my cup is filled from me giving to myself from them years that I lost, from them unanswered questions, and I'm able to not even like basically, like I said, I could go deeper, but I feel the well to some
Yeah.
degree.
Um,
And that's the service that I give to people. When I give to myself, I'm able to be of service by explaining to somebody, but it started with me first. So I
Yeah,
get,
well, of course. Yeah, I mean, you have to love yourself on a continual
Mhm.
basis in order for you to service others, right? I mean, oh, I shouldn't say you have to. It is great, the results of the service is greatly improved. The effectiveness of the service is greatly improved when we do it from a place of self-love, of being grounded in who we are, of being healed and all that type of stuff. But I would push back having spent some time with you and witnessed your space yesterday. Just you do tip your cup. You most certainly do it. You do not strain yourself perhaps in the tipping of the cup because it becomes natural because you have a lot to offer, and it doesn't require you to exert yourself a great deal to do that, but you do. And so I just want to honor you on that, but honor the fact that you do it from a place of security, right? I think that's what we
yeah,
all want. You don't do it from a place where you're just pouring out the last drop and you're like scraping it out and trying to get every drop out. You're pouring it, as you said, that there's always something coming into you, and so that you have abundance to share. And I think that is how it should be. So, kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more point to the keys to the purpose process, and we'll wrap up. But hopefully this is useful, right? I mean, again, to Kenneth's point that these can happen in any order. I agree. I mapped it out based upon my experience and how it happened for me. But yeah, someone can start. Coach Rob just said I started with service, and then somewhere along the line I started, to self love or self discovery, and right, it was all over the place. And his formula looks different, and someone else's here formula might look even different from that. And so I am in agreement that we can come at this from a couple of different angles, and you may have other steps, right? I use the four here because I like to keep it to 3 or 4 bullet points, and I use these because I wanted to maintain the S alliteration. But you can have some other elements, but we agree. I think we generally agree. At least I hope we agree. And if not, let's have a discussion, or let's connect one to one if anyone wants to dive into this further. That these elements are somewhat consistent across the board when we're talking about purpose. All right, the last one here, submission, and this. Again, I'm giving my perspective as a man of faith, as a man who is submitted to God and who believes that my purpose is in align with His will. Part of the reason why I feel very good about the work that I do in my purpose in terms of men's ministry, this type of space, is because I know it is something that God wants me to do. And so I get a tremendous amount of peace knowing it was ordained by God. He wants me to do it, and so He's going to make for it to be successful. And so on an ongoing basis, I talk to a lot about stillness, right? A lot of the projects, good projects, some of the projects actually are from God, but they were not for this season. Some of the things that have been doing over the last couple of months, some of you guys know, I have a Christian e-commerce brand, a Christian streetwear brand. Good project, anointed by God, but not for this season. I was doing it because I wanted something to do rather than doing the thing that He called me to do, which was this and writing the book. So the submission now, when we talk about stillness, when I talk about stillness, when I talk about slowing down, part of that submission is moving all those distractions. It's cutting out the multiple devices at the same time. It's cutting out all of the other things that are keeping me from just being laser focused on the purpose. And so that's what I mean by submission. You can be submitted to other things. You can be submitted to your family. You can be submitted to your community. You can be submitted to the principles, right? Ryan was talking about being a Buddhist. You can be submitted to some of those kind of principles and values. And we can have a theological debate and all that type of stuff. That's not what we're here for. We're here for the idea that there's something greater than ourselves, recognizing that there's something greater than ourselves, our family, our culture, our values, so on and so forth, and working to the benefit of that thing more so than the benefit of ourselves. That's really the point I want to make here. And the more that we, kind of check in on ourselves from a position of integrity and honor to say, am I still aligned with that thing, that set of values, those set of beliefs, that group of people, that higher power, whatever it is, am I still doing it? Or have I started to fall in love with the money? Have I started to fall in love with the praise and adoration that I'm getting? Have I started to fall in love with, smelling myself, for lack of a better phrase, right? We can all get to that place where you start smelling ourselves, right? And so that's the thing I'm speaking against when we just, because smelling yourself will have you doing some things you're not supposed to be doing. And to the degree that we can guard against that and keep ourselves grounded in the purpose is how we will remain effective in the purpose. So that's the four things. I'm curious, aside from the fact that there is some alliteration, and I try to keep it to 3 or 4 bullet points, if there's anything else somebody else would add to this list, if there's a concept here or that's missing from here that you think would be helpful in the process of discovering or embracing our purpose. Excuse me.
Environment, if you're in the wrong place,
Mm,
you could really
mm.
just, you could be all over your purpose and
Absolutely.
just told that, so environment.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that can mess all of this other stuff up. Like you might not ever be able to get to self-discovery, self-love, service, or submission being in the wrong space.
Yes. Facts. 100%, Andres. That is absolutely on point. Um, Going back to the slides of total wellness, one of the dimensions of wellness is environmental and social, right? So it is to suggest that things outside of us influence our wellness, right? And so you're absolutely right. Good point. Thank you, sir. Dave, you want to jump in?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And this one is I'm really putting it on your lap, David, because you obviously have a lot more wisdom than I do,
Oh, please, no.
especially for the other brothers who out there. Um, so here's what I've and you can also feel free to translate it for us from you know that the to the what the spiritual meaning is when it comes to environment. But Tony Robbins has a say that it goes don't 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 attempt to leave your current environment unless you've done the work. On the flip side, be prepared to change your environment once you get to the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So I think the message is very straightforward. So I want it, the first half, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Because often, when things are not working or you hate your job or wife or husband or, your community, the implied message there from Tony Robbins is that, okay, well, none of, yes, you may be a victim, but one, how did you allow it to go for that long? Clearly, there's something missing within your own values or principles. So let's address that before you run away, because there's a chance of you repeating that cycle.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. I don't know, Andres, if you could think of a scripture that would coincides with that. Um, but the concept makes perfect sense, right? The concept that we're going to bring our problems with us wherever we go, so we might as well fix them where we are.
Everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've talked about this a lot. I am impatient, and so I can remember many times throughout my professional career fantasizing, like literally in my mind, being in a meeting or something, saying, "I can't wait till I leave this job," and then the same thing would happen in the next job, and the next job, and the next job, right? Because I was uncomfortable with the fact that some of the stuff is tedious. Some of the stuff involves process. Some of the stuff requires negotiating and managing relationships and some of those things. And I was always trying to escape it. I just wanted the pleasantness. All right, all right. I wanted to get the promotion and the money. Didn't want to deal with any of the other stuff. But that impatience kept going. And now I find myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I find that thought popping into my head every now and then, like, I can't wait to leave this job. And I was like, well, I'm the all right, I'm the boss, right? What job am I going to next? If I can't be patient with myself, and so absolutely right there. We do need to solve the problems. Now, to Ryan's point earlier, and I think Coach Rob was trying to talk to this as well when he talked about this distraction saved his life, right? There is something to be said for displacing things for a season, right? Like you know. for whatever reason, probably when I was 14 or 18 or whatever, I probably wasn't in the space to really do the deep work, so to speak. And so at that point, although I wouldn't condone the lifestyle, the sexual party lifestyle I had, it probably would have been helpful, constructive had I just been really into sports or something, right? I had been really into just going out and hitting the basketball court. So, having some level of escapism, if you will, Dave, I think is probably healthy, but making a lifestyle out of escapism is when it becomes problematic. So, hope that answers that question. I'll meditate
Oh, I
on
got one.
and study the word and see if we can find a good scriptural reference for that. Go ahead, Andres.
Uh, God said to Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Be fruitful, multiply, subdue, and have dominion. In terms of environment, if you don't think you can't, you're not able to be fruitful, like assess that. Like, does my job suck, or is my attitude about my job suck?
Mm-hmm.
Is it my partner, or am I not like doing the work?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Subdue. Am I too honest? Am I so honest I hurt people's feelings all the time? And then like
Mm.
dominion, do I fly off the handle, and do I need to get my stoicism up?
Mm-hmm.
Call
Mm.
back.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Good question. Good concept there, about um, not leaving. And then, on the flip side, you're absolutely right, Dave. I think there's something to be said for the revelation that comes once we're healed. Now, I wouldn't, you take a marriage, for instance, you're married, 20, 25, whatever. By the time you're 45, you've gone through some things, and now, suddenly you're kind of a different person. I wouldn't suggest leaving that, right? Something, some commitments we have to maintain, but certainly, for a lot of the relationships that we have coming up, for me, growing up in New York City, I had a lot of people that I called friends that were just people on the block, right? That, people that were just close to me in proximity. And so once I get to a place where I'm, going to school, going to work, doing a career, now I'm in different circles. So if I'm holding on to those old homeboys that are still on the corner, still on the block doing the same thing, that's probably something, there's probably a disconnect there. So there's certainly things that we do need to continuously reevaluate as we grow and mature. Is the environment, are the relationships still feeding us? Are they still conducive to growth? Are they still conducive to healing? So on and so forth. So that's a great point as well. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Welcome, brothers. Good to have you here. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on purpose? Anything that was missing from the list that you maybe need to add, as we think about kind of this in totality?
I want to say something about the quote that I think is so powerful, that don't leave something until, what was it? Don't leave something until you, I guess, you finish whatever
Yeah,
it was supposed
don't
to be.
sit. Yeah. So say I hate my job, right?
Hmm.
Which is, something you kind of, it's rather popular out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, listen, if you must leave because um it's a life and death, yes. But if
Mhm.
it isn't, what the universe is recommending is that take a step back
Hmm.
and try to zero in on how you got there so you can prevent yourself from getting there again. So, and to achieve that successfully, it's recommending that you stay there, because if you leave, you will not have the opportunity to do that work.
Yeah, you won't have the same pressure to solve that problem. Yeah, that's good.
Correct. And I'll give you a better example. So say I'm with a woman, and she's not building me. I kind of enjoy being with her, but I know deep down she's really not adding value to my life. And I myself, I know, because I'm so broken, I'm not adding any value to the relationship either. So what it's recommending, rather than trying to, okay, figuring out a exit strategy, take a step back and try to identify why you got there. What attracted you to that person? And and I'm sure by month 3, something told you this is not a good fit, and you stuck with it. It wants you to identify, and what you may realize is that, hey, I love, and this is a real life scenario, and it's personal. It's not from movies or books. So one of the beautiful thing about my mother and my 2 sisters, I'm the oldest of 4. The beautiful part about my mother and the women that raised me, I came from a 2-parent home. The beauty about my those women is that they're strong, self-sufficient, sophisticated, etc. Blah 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 blah. The opportunities around some of those women is that I kind of
Great job. I love
grew
that.
up to be a bit of a mama's boy, right? So in my earlier days coming up, which I still do now, but I have the tools to manage it. I had this thing where I was crazy about women who were like, walking tall, sophisticated, self-achievers, whatever, whatever. Not understanding that some of those relationships tend to treat me like the way my mother treated me. Right? So you guys see where I'm coming from with this? Until you can understand how you got there and what kept you there, you'll probably not prevent it from happening again.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Rob,
So
you
it
wanted.
just goes, don't attempt to leave until you've done the work, and be prepared to change your environment once you've done the work.
Yeah.
Because you'll obviously be a different person and your current environment won't be able to stand you. That's just what it means.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, in that scenario, in similar situations like it, right? Recognizing that you have what's the word I'm looking, a preference, right, based upon a certain type of upbringing. You may recognize that that preference is unhealthy, and as you say, want to leave, or you may decide that the preference is healthy, but you need to set different expectations or set different boundaries in order for it to work. But the point is very well received, brother. Thank you. Coach, you wanted to add something to that?
No, so I was just trying to understand the concept of, or well, I guess his perspective, because I guess it's based off of somebody that is aware of where they are and
Hmm.
have that sense of awareness. Because
Hmm.
I mean, I know for me, it's funny. That same quote came to me when I was actually transitioning and moving when I moved to Florida, and they told me don't pack what was going on in Chicago to transition with me in Florida. But I thought the interesting thing was I was able to maintain and actually focus when I actually moved. And I didn't know what was going to be in Florida. Um, and I did it scared. So
Hmm.
I get it. I get it. The idea of finish before you transition, that just probably just wasn't my story. You know what I'm saying? But I also understand his perspective.
Yeah, so we also wove in there, Coach, that sometimes we need to escape, right? Some amount of escape is appropriate, right? If you're in a situation that is not conducive to healing, not conducive to self-discovery, not conducive to self-love, then staying there to solve that problem is not always the wise decision. Sometimes it's essential, sometimes it's not. And so,
Yeah.
if you decided that you needed to escape in order to heal, in order to do the self-discovery, so on and so forth, and no one can fault you. And I'd say, in hindsight, we can all look back and say it worked, right? Coach Rob is awesome. So, we honor that decision. So it's not a hard and fast rule. I think what he's talking about is a different situation in which the problem is not created by the environment. The problem is us, right? And we think we're going to take, go somewhere else and not have it, but we are. And so he's saying if that is the case, it's probably better if you just deal with the problem and then decide how, if and when to move. But your situation was the environment, right? I mean, I think that was slightly different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was the environment, but also it was my way of thinking. I had to unlearn. So it was a lot of different layers. So,
Yep.
and I think the biggest blessing was the fact of everything that I went through
Hmm.
or whatever, because now,
Lost you, bro.
sorry,
Oh.
it was transferring to the car. Um, and I don't know. I think I'm just in a space where like me going back multiple times, yeah, I could have did other things, but I also think that those was my biggest thing, so I could actually get the experience because it was going to happen anyway. So
Yeah.
I completely understand.
Hmm. Don't beat yourself up. All right.
Oh no, I feel great. I
Oh, okay.
feel great. I feel great.
Okay, good. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, brothers, thank you. This has been awesome. I know we are a little bit past time, approaching our high water mark for lengthy conversation, which is always good. It's a good sign that we tend to run long, but I don't want to rush off without giving folks an opportunity to share or contribute if there's anyone, and if not, that's fine as well. Going once, going twice.
We might have to talk about this pornography addiction at some point.
Mm,
Uh, I'm very interested in whatever sharing, hearing other people's experiences and all that
mhm.
stuff. I posted a book in the chat that was profound for me, but
Wow.
yeah, definitely interested.
Wow. Yeah. 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 I'm here for it. I'm here for us really, tearing down all the superficial layers and getting into some real depth of the things that that we're struggling with or have struggled with and how we overcome and all that type of stuff. I'm here for it. Um, so yeah, we should be sensitive to when and how to make time for stuff like that. Good thought, man. So, Dave, you're off mute. Did you want to jump in? You have a final thought?
Just wanted to say thank you for Titus for inviting me here. I look forward to get to know all of you guys, and I'm in my 40s, four children, married, and hospitality professional. One thing I want to leave you all with, some of you with, not all of you, obviously not David. I couldn't have anything for you, sir. But
Of course you can.
in this journey of self-discovery, you'll probably experience more setbacks than than good days. So just remember to be kind to yourself and be patient with the journey. It's a very slow marathon and it's infinite.
Yes.
Um, so and keep building and improving your environment, your support system.
Yes. Wisdom, wisdom. For the record, I am not beyond wisdom, brother. Don't let the nice packaging and all that stuff fool you. I am here to receive from you all as well. I am not above any anything wisdom, maturity, feedback, insight, perspective. But that was a good gem for sure, brother. Thank you, and welcome. Thank you, Titus, for sharing and bringing brothers in. By the way, brothers, I am not a hater. If you are doing something, James and Rob have a space that they are starting. If you guys want to post it in the chat, Kenneth posted his stuff in the chat. I know we're gonna try and get some brothers together to talk about business projects and all that type of stuff. Share your contact information. I do not need to be the center of the universe, right? Y'all can have, right? I want y'all to connect with each other and fellowship and grow and support each other, even if it has nothing to do with the brothers community or the huddle. So, feel free to do that. Um, all right. Last chance. Final thoughts. three.
I got one more. Sorry, guys. I know y'all want to get off.
I saw you
I
come on
know
camera. I think you had something. Go ahead.
it's always one more person. I didn't want to be that guy, but today I might. Um, just I yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate the conversation that was had today about purpose. I felt really interested with everyone, not just yours perspective, David, but everyone's perspective today. And yeah, I'm in that same boat of trying to find purpose and being in the situation where like I can feel myself almost jumping to the environment, but I still have work to do. And after hearing everyone just talk, I'm more motivated to do the work, even though it feels uncomfortable at the same time. So
Hmm.
I appreciate you all for just sharing your thoughts, sharing your energy, and being in this space. So
That's
appreciate
right,
this
man.
space as well.
Yeah, you think about it, man. You think about, for those of us who are athletes or played little sports recreationally in the past, right? How do you get better, right? You gotta be bad, right? You gotta have days when you come home from practice sore, bruised up, skinned knees, right? That's how we get better with our craft, right? And so it's the same thing with ourselves. We are our biggest hobby, we are our biggest project, we are our biggest venture, biggest endeavor. And even though we come out of the womb alive, we don't come out of it aligned, right? We are alive but not aligned, and not purpose, not centered in all the areas that we need to. So Dave's point and your recognition of that point, that self-discovery is challenging, it's difficult. It is not always pleasant. There's not always a high five at the end of the day. It's like, there's a lot of days when, for me personally, a lot of days was just like my face buried in the pillow, just like, literally yelling into the pillow, right? Yeah, pillow, because the weight of all of my hurt and trauma and all the experiences, the weight of going through it and cataloging it, and oh, okay, now I understand why I do that. Now I understand why I react to way to this. Oh my goodness, I forgot that even happened, right? I forgot that moment even happened with that person. All of that stuff is difficult, and so completely agree. Give yourself some grace, some patience, some peace, and it's a long process, but the benefit, particularly for you young men who are approaching that now, is that you have something that I at least did not have, and I don't know if Dave, who sounds like he came from a very strong family background. I don't know if you, Dave, had a community around you that was helping you with your self-discovery process and pouring into you through the process. I didn't have that. You guys have it. James, you have it. Andres, any Titus, any other young brothers in your 20s or 30s that are going through this process, you have it. I want, not just me, but you have, I am him and all that type of stuff. So hopefully that helps you through.
Real quick, David, I just wanted to share this. Thank you, James, for that comment, because that made me think of me and Dave are listening to this book by Charlemagne the God called Get Honest or Die Lying.
Mm,
And in it, he talks about in one of the early chapters, people not putting in the work first, but they just want to be put on the main stage,
hmm.
but they haven't put in the time and the practice behind closed doors.
Hmm.
And then, they get mad when, um, they don't last in the industry or whatever,
That's
but
right.
it's because they didn't put in the work. So don't rush to get somewhere that you're not ready for.
Amen.
Like it'll be there. It'll be there when it's
That's
time.
right. That's right.
You're just not ready yet. So just
Yeah,
in the meantime, continue to work on you. Um, so that when you are ready, it's easy.
that's right. That's good. That's good. That is good. That's good. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Thais. All right. Brothers, well, I think this is it. I think this is officially our longest session. So awesome. That means we are having a good conversation. We're dealing with topics that are useful and valuable, and no shade to anyone who had to drop out early. I know 2 hours is a long time, but the fact that we've persisted this long is a good sign. The brother Rasan, who we wanted to pray for, he stepped out. I'm probably going to reach out to him to directly to pray for him and his sister, but I'll offer it again if anyone has any prayer requests before we wrap up. Speak now, or we'll just do a quick general prayer and get out of here. All right. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time of fellowship, Lord. We thank you that you are bringing us together for the purpose of iron sharpening iron, for us to grow, heal, mature, and reach the true, powerful, awesome, beautiful, creative potential that you've assigned for us through the recognition of our gifts and talents and purpose. So move within us now, Lord. Move within us to see these things, to love ourselves, to discover ourselves, to heal from the past and embrace the past, such that we can be a blessing to others, Lord. Thank you, thank you, thank you for how you're moving in our lives. As we leave this place, but never your presence, Lord, give us the grace. Give us the grace of with ourselves to know ourselves and to love ourselves so that we can begin to serve and love others. We ask these things in the mighty and matchless name of Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, and we say amen, amen, amen. Grace and peace, brothers. Shalom, shalom.